The moment I knew something was off was when my 6-year-old son whispered, "Aunt Elise says you cry in the kitchen when I'm asleep." He was munching on dry cereal at the breakfast bar, swinging his legs, completely unaware that his words dropped into my chest like a stone in still water. I smiled, gently brushed his hair aside, and said, "Don't worry, honey. Mommy's okay." But my mind was already spiraling. How would Elise know what I did late at night? Why was she talking to my son alone? I should have trusted my gut that day. I should have seen the way Elise's eyes lingered on Ryan a little too long at Sunday dinners. Or how she always volunteered to help with the wedding planning, even when I hadn't asked. But I didn't. Because after years of divorce, raising my son alone, and scraping by on long night shifts in the NICU, I had finally met someone who made me believe I deserved joy again. Dr. Ryan Langford. Warm smile, soft voice, the kind of man who never raised his tone, even in arguments. He was a therapist, too, which made me feel safe at first. But safety, I've learned, can be the perfect disguise for betrayal. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments, have you ever trusted someone so much you didn't see it coming? And where are you watching from? We love seeing the stories reach all across the world. If it's your first time here, welcome. Be sure to hit subscribe for more true life betrayals and comebacks. Now back to this story. 2 days before my wedding, I found a necklace in Elise's purse. It was the same silver locket Ryan had gifted me 3 months ago, the one with my initials engraved on it. Only this one had hers. And that's when the unraveling began. I told myself it couldn't mean anything. The locket in Elise's purse. Maybe Ryan had just ordered 2 by mistake. Maybe it was a bridesmaid gift. Maybe I was just spiraling because I was tired and stressed from planning a wedding while juggling 12-hour hospital shifts and my son's allergy appointments. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I waited until the house was quiet, then crept back into the guest room where Elise was staying for the weekend. Her purse was still on the chair. I knew I was crossing a line, but when I opened the locket, my breath caught. Instead of a photo of me and Ryan like mine had, hers had a picture of Ryan and Elise, his arm around her, her head leaning in like they were in a secret. The date engraved on the back was 2 weeks before he proposed to me. I stood there, frozen, my heart thudding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Then I did something I've never done before. I took out my phone and started recording. Every drawer I opened, every message I read, every voicemail Elise had saved under a folder labeled R. And what I found wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. Elise had been calling Ryan late at night, sending him articles titled, "When Your Partner is Emotionally Damaged," and "How to Help a Mother Who's Too Fragile." I found a voice memo where Ryan said, "If we want to have a future, Elise, we have to make sure Claire's not in a position to take full custody." She laughed in the recording. She's too busy being the tragic nurse martyr to see what's happening. I think I stopped breathing. Because that's when I realized this wasn't just about my heart. This was about my son. They weren't planning to just hurt me. They were planning to replace me. The next morning, I said nothing. Elise made us all waffles like everything was fine. Ryan kissed me on the forehead and said he couldn't wait to marry me. I smiled. I even took a photo of us all sitting at the kitchen table because something inside me told me I would want to remember that moment, the last time they thought they were winning. That night was the rehearsal dinner. Ryan's family flew in from Portland, and Elise wore a green silk dress she knew I had been eyeing for weeks. She gave a toast halfway through the meal. At first, it sounded sweet. How proud she was of me, how she'd always looked up to her big sister. Then her tone changed. Claire's always been sensitive. So much heart, so much emotion. Sometimes, too much. But that's what makes her special. She cares more than she should, even when it costs her. Laughter rippled through the guests, but I felt my fingers clench around the stem of my wine glass. Ryan chuckled too, like it was an inside joke, like I was the punchline. When the dinner ended and everyone posed for pictures under the string lights, I watched Elise whisper something in Ryan's ear and saw the way his eyes dropped to her collarbone like it was automatic. And still, I said nothing, because I wanted them to feel safe. I wanted them to believe I was weak, that I hadn't figured anything out, that I was still the same overworked, love-starved woman who needed saving. That night, as I tucked my son into bed, he hugged me and said, "Mommy, will we still live together after you marry Uncle Ryan?" I froze. "What do you mean, baby?" He looked up, frowning. "Aunt Elise said sometimes mommies go away when they're not feeling good, and then daddies and aunties take care of everything." My mouth went dry. I kissed his forehead and waited until he fell asleep. Then I went into the bathroom, turned on the shower so no one could hear, and I cried the kind of tears that don't make a sound. Just breathless, chest-crushing sobs you feel in your bones. I stared at myself in the mirror, eyes puffy, makeup smeared. This version of me I didn't recognize anymore. I wasn't just humiliated. I was being erased, slowly, strategically, by the two people I had trusted most in the world. Elise had once held my hand the night I gave birth, when I hemorrhaged and thought I wouldn't make it. Ryan had helped me through panic attacks I didn't even know how to name. And now, they were taking everything I had left, smiling as they did it. That was the night I stopped being the victim. That was the night I made a decision. But not the kind Elise would expect. Not yelling, not begging, not exploding. I decided to vanish, quietly. Just long enough for them to get comfortable. Just long enough to collect what I needed. And then, I would come back. Not as Claire, the broken bride, but as the woman they'd never see coming. I left before sunrise. No note, no explanation. Just packed a duffel with clothes, my nursing badge, a notebook, and the voice recordings I'd transferred to a flash drive. I didn't even bring my wedding dress. I dropped my son off at my friend Morgan's place. She's a night shift nurse too, someone I trusted with my life. I didn't tell her the whole story, just that I needed 48 hours. "Say no more," she whispered, pulling me into a hug. "You come back when you're ready. We'll be here." Then I drove 3 hours north, to a place I hadn't visited in nearly 7 years. My mother's old lake cabin in Pine Hollow. My father had sold it after she died, but I knew the new owners, a retired couple who only used it in the summer. I had stayed in touch with them, helped them arrange in-home care for a relative once. And when I called and asked if I could stay for a few days, no questions asked, they said yes. The cabin smelled like cedar and dried lavender, like nothing had changed since the last time I came there to cry after my divorce. The wind off the lake was cold, but it felt like clarity. I spent the first few hours just sitting on the porch, watching the mist rise off the water, holding the locket Elise had tried to hide, clicking it open and shut like a metronome for my thoughts. This wasn't about jealousy anymore. It wasn't even about heartbreak. It was about warfare. Psychological, legal, maternal. They wanted to use my past as a weapon. Fine. I'd use their present. I opened my notebook and started a timeline. Every moment Elise had undermined me. Every time Ryan forgot to update me on therapy sessions involving my son. Every conversation that now sounded different in hindsight. I compiled screenshots, dates, receipts. Every gaslighting moment suddenly snapped into place, like the time Ryan suggested I skip a work shift to rest. But Elise just happened to show up and take my son to a museum without telling me. Or how Elise had offered to organize the wedding guest list and quietly removed half the people from my side. Or the fact that my father, who'd always been quiet but kind, hadn't spoken to me in weeks because Elise told him I'd accused Ryan of cheating without proof and was becoming unstable again. That one hurt. But it told me something important. Elise was already planting seeds, laying the groundwork. I couldn't confront her with rage. It would play into her narrative. No, I needed credibility, documentation, and someone who could help me navigate a system built to disbelieve women like me. That's when I remembered the name scribbled in my mother's old recipe book. Call Tessa. She was my cousin, older than me by 10 years, and we hadn't talked in nearly a decade after a falling out in the family over money. But I remembered she had gone to law school and worked as a clerk for a judge in Charleston. I wasn't sure if she'd even pick up. But she did. And when she heard my voice, she didn't hesitate. Claire? Wow, it's been a while. I didn't have the energy to make small talk. Tessa? I think someone's trying to take my son from me. And I think they're doing it by painting me as unstable. And I have proof. But I don't know what to do next. There was a long pause. Then her voice dropped. Where are you? Pine Hollow, Mom's old cabin. Another pause. Stay there. I'll come to you. Give me 5 hours. And she did. 5 hours and one large black coffee later, Tessa pulled up in a beat-up Subaru, still in her courthouse blazer. She looked like someone who had been through life and come out the other side no longer afraid to be blunt. She hugged me without words. Then she opened her laptop and said, "Show me everything." We sat at that old wooden table for 6 straight hours. I showed her the voice recordings, the texts Elise had accidentally sent to me instead of Ryan, the emails Elise had forwarded to our father under the subject line, concerning behavior. Tessa didn't flinch. She just kept typing, building folders, linking files, color-coding lies. At one point, she looked up and said, "You realize this is a form of legal triangulation, right? They're creating a paper trail to portray you as unfit. If this reaches court without preparation, you lose." My stomach sank. So what do I do? We out-strategize them. We document everything. We don't engage emotionally. We get ahead of them legally. And we make sure that when the time comes, you look like the most stable, prepared, loving parent a judge has ever seen. I nodded, even though inside I was terrified. Tessa leaned forward, lowered her voice. You need to stop being shocked. Start being dangerous. That night, I slept in the attic where my mother used to keep her journals. I pulled one out, worn, cracked leather, and found something that made my hands tremble. An entry from 14 years ago, the year Elise graduated high school. Sometimes I worry about Elise. She's charming, but there's something about how she talks to people when she thinks no one's listening. She treats life like it's a play and everyone else is just background. I read the line over and over. My mother had seen it, long before I did. I closed the journal and stared out the small, round attic window at the stars above the lake. I felt something shift in me, not just anger, but focus. They wanted to erase me, but I was about to make sure the world saw exactly who they were first. The court summons arrived just 2 days after I left Pine Hollow. A thick white envelope, hand-delivered to Morgan's apartment, while she was walking my son to the park. Inside was a petition for temporary shared custody, filed by Ryan Langford with Elise Ashton, listed as a designated household guardian. The words blurred as I stared at them. The language was chillingly precise. Concerns regarding the petitioner's emotional regulation, observed erratic behavior, intermittent neglect indicators per household witnesses. I flipped to the affidavit section and saw Elise's signature, followed by a typed statement that started with, "Though I love my sister, I must prioritize the well-being of my nephew." That single sentence broke something in me I didn't know could still be broken. I was shaking so hard I dropped the folder onto Morgan's tile floor. Morgan picked it up, her face pale. "She's really doing this. They're actually trying to make you look unstable. And the worst part? It was working." My father had already pulled away from me emotionally. He'd canceled dinner plans the week before without explanation. Now I knew why. I called him from the cabin later that night, heart pounding, hoping maybe, just maybe, he'd believe me. He answered after 4 rings. "Claire, that's all. No warmth, no affection." "Dad, I need you to listen to me. Elise and Ryan are—" He cut me off. "They're concerned about you, Claire. So am I. I've been watching from the sidelines, trying not to interfere, but honestly, you haven't seemed okay, even before the wedding stress." My breath caught. "You believe them?" "I believe something's wrong, and I believe they're trying to help." I don't remember what I said after that, only that I hung up with my hands trembling so violently, I nearly dropped the phone. Tessa found me curled up in the porch chair that night, wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the lake. "They filed," I murmured. "She listed herself as guardian. And my dad, he believes her." Tessa nodded slowly, crouching beside me. "You know what this means, right? They're not just playing dirty. They're trying to get ahead of us. This is an ambush, a credibility war." She pulled out her laptop and began typing. "We counterfile, full custody, no visitation. We attach the voice recordings. We prepare for depositions. I'll get an emergency hearing scheduled." I looked at her, blinking through hot tears. What if they still win? What if I look unhinged just for defending myself? Tessa closed her laptop, her voice low but firm. "Claire, they're going to paint you as crazy no matter what you do. So your job now is to be unshakable." The next week passed in a blur of notarized documents, affidavit prep, legal forms, and stomach-churning anxiety. I had to sit for a court-appointed psychological evaluation, an exhausting, clinical dissection of my parenting, mental health history, and relationship with Ryan. I felt like I was being dissected by strangers who didn't know I'd spent nights sleeping upright in hospital chairs just to be near my son after his asthma attacks. Strangers who didn't see the banana I always sliced thin because he hated mushy bites, or the fact I memorized the ingredient lists of every brand in the grocery store because of his allergies. They didn't see that mother. They just saw a woman accused of being too emotional. The day before our emergency hearing, a package arrived for me at the cabin. No return address. Inside was a worn paperback copy of Goodnight Moon, my son's favorite book, and a note in Elise's handwriting. It read, "We're not trying to hurt you, Claire. We're just doing what's best. Don't make this harder than it has to be." My hands crumpled the note before I even realized it. I threw the book across the room and screamed into a pillow until my voice cracked. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered into the attic again, needing something, anything, to hold on to. That's when I found a voice memo saved on my old iPad, buried in a folder labeled Mom's Things. I had forgotten I even had it. I clicked play. The audio was faint, recorded years ago before she passed. Her voice came through warm and tired. "Claire, if you ever find this, I want you to remember something. You feel things deeply. That's not a weakness. That's your gift. Don't let anyone use your heart against you. Not Elise. Not anyone." I covered my mouth with my hands, sobbing quietly in that attic. Because somehow she knew. Somehow she always knew. Elise would one day try to wear a crown she didn't earn. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror in that cabin bathroom, brushing my hair back, practicing my breathing. Tessa stood behind me, holding the files we'd prepped. "You ready to burn down their narrative?" she asked. I didn't flinch. "No, I'm ready to let them burn themselves. All I have to do is tell the truth." The courtroom smelled like stale air and worn carpet, the kind of place where stories either collapse under pressure or ignite into history. I sat at the petitioner's table beside Tessa, dressed in a simple navy dress and gray flats. No mascara, no jewelry, just me, stripped of armor, but fortified with truth. Elise sat across from me in a soft pink blazer and pearls, like she was auditioning for sainthood. Ryan was beside her, in a dark suit, eyes fixed on the judge's bench like he was waiting for applause. I didn't look at either of them. Instead, I focused on the judge, a woman in her late 50s with cropped silver hair and a reputation for having zero tolerance for theatrics. She called the hearing to order, flipping through the folders in front of her. Tessa rose and opened with a calm, focused statement about the dangerous nature of narrative manipulation in custody disputes. And then she handed over the flash drive. "Your Honor, we'd like to submit audio evidence that directly contradicts the respondent's filed statements and exposes coordinated efforts to undermine the petitioner's parental credibility." The courtroom shifted. Elise tilted her head, like she hadn't heard correctly. Ryan's hand twitched. The judge plugged in the flash drive and pressed play. The first voice to echo through the speakers was Elise's. "She'll believe anything if you just keep using the word overwhelmed. She wants so badly to be rescued. It's pathetic." A collective hush fell over the room. Then Ryan's voice followed. "If she spirals, we document it. Courts hate drama. If we play it right, she looks unstable, and we get full influence." I watched the judge's mouth flatten into a hard line. She paused the recording. "Is this their actual voice?" Tessa nodded. "Confirmed and time-stamped, Your Honor. There are 6 more clips available." The judge turned to Elise, who looked frozen, like a mannequin in a wax museum. Ryan leaned toward his attorney, whispering urgently. The judge raised her hand. "Mr. Langford, you'll remain silent unless addressed directly." Elise opened her mouth, then closed it. Her hands began to tremble. Tessa handed over printouts of the transcript. We've also submitted evidence showing misuse of therapy boundaries by Mr. Langford, violations of ethical standards, emotional entanglement with family members of patients, and preemptive influence over custody arrangements. Additionally, we've included a series of emails where Ms. Ashton actively discouraged the petitioner from seeking independent mental health support while simultaneously crafting the narrative of emotional instability. The judge held up one of the printed emails. "This one? You sent this?" she asked Elise. Elise nodded, face flushing. I meant it out of concern. Claire has a history of—" The judge cut her off. "Ms. Ashton, you sent an email stating we should stop her from seeking outside help until after the petition is in. That doesn't sound like concern. That sounds like orchestration." Elise blinked. For the first time, she looked scared. Really scared. Then Ryan stood, against his attorney's frantic whispering, and said, "I think we're blowing things out of proportion here. Everyone says things in private. We were just venting frustrations. We never intended harm." The judge's voice was like ice. "You never intended harm. Yet you filed to remove a child from his mother's primary care based on intentionally falsified perceptions. As a licensed mental health professional, Mr. Langford, you are held to a higher standard." She turned to the clerk. "Suspend proceedings. This needs to be escalated to a review panel. Mr. Langford's license status is now under provisional review, effective immediately." Ryan sank into his chair like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. Elise turned slowly toward him, eyes wide. "You told me it wouldn't go this far," she hissed, not caring that we could all hear. He didn't answer. Outside the windows, the sky was clouded and gray. But I swear in that moment, it felt like the sun broke through. The judge looked at me then. "Ms. Emerson, is there anything you'd like to say before I make a provisional ruling on the custody issue?" I stood slowly, holding the locket with my initials in one hand and Elise's version in the other. Only that I didn't come here to win. I came here to stop losing. My son doesn't need a perfect mother. He just needs one who won't let people rewrite the truth of who she is. And I won't let anyone take that from him. For a few long seconds, the courtroom was dead silent. Even the fluorescent lights above us seemed to hum a little softer. The judge nodded. "Thank you. I'll be issuing a temporary order for sole custody to remain with the petitioner pending final review. Visitation privileges are suspended for the respondents until further notice." Elise's jaw dropped. Ryan swore under his breath. And just like that, it was done. Outside the courthouse, reporters were already gathering. Somehow, someone had leaked the courtroom clip. Probably someone in the hallway with a phone. I didn't say a word. I just walked past Elise, who looked like she had aged 10 years in 20 minutes, and past Ryan, who was now on the phone with someone, his voice rising in panic. Tessa touched my arm and whispered, "Claire, you did it." I nodded slowly. "No, they did it. I just let the truth speak." The story hit local news within 48 hours. By the end of the week, it was being discussed on podcasts, parenting forums, even picked up by a national legal talk show titled "When Custody Goes Criminal." The audio clips of Elise and Ryan played on loop under headlines like "Therapist and Bride Sister," "Attempt to Oust Mother from Custody," "Fail Spectacularly in Court." Ryan's clinic was flooded with one-star reviews, and the Board of Ethics launched a full investigation into his license. His name trended on social media for all the wrong reasons. Screenshots of his affidavit versus his leaked voice memos were posted side by side with captions like "Red flag in a suit" and "How to lose a career in 6 minutes." Elise fared even worse. She had made a name for herself in the community as a mental health advocate, the polished speaker at fundraisers and women's luncheons. But the same women who once applauded her charm now watched her unravel in a pink courtroom blazer. Within a week, her invitation to speak at a university panel was revoked. The local charity board asked her to step down until the matter is resolved. She deleted all her social media and issued a vague statement through a PR rep. "I made mistakes. I've apologized to those involved privately." But what she hadn't done, and what the public saw clearly, was take responsibility. The apology meant nothing, especially not to me. My father called me 3 days after the ruling. I let it go to voicemail. His message was shaky, uncertain. "Claire, I don't know what to say. I was wrong. I was so wrong. And I see that now. I hope, when you're ready, we can talk." I didn't delete the message, but I didn't call him back either. Some wounds need time. Others need distance. What I didn't expect was the letter that arrived the next day, handwritten, in my dad's old carpenter's scrawl. Inside, it was a check, not for money, but for the deed to our family home. "I'm moving in with your uncle for now," he wrote. "If this helps you and your son build something new, then it's yours. No strings." I stared at the paper for a long time, unsure whether to cry or smile. In the end, I just exhaled deep, quiet relief. That week, I picked my son up from Morgan's, and when he saw me walk through the door, he sprinted into my arms and said, "I missed you every night." I held him so tightly, I think I forgot to breathe. I didn't tell him everything, just that Mommy was back and we were going home together. The next few days felt like exhaling after years of holding my breath. I made waffles with strawberries, let him sleep in my bed for 3 nights straight, and slowly began sorting through boxes I hadn't touched since my divorce. I found a photograph from his first birthday. Me, Elise, and our mom, holding him together in the backyard, balloons in the background, all of us smiling. I stared at Elise's face in the photo for a long time, not with hatred, but with sorrow. I don't think she ever really loved him, not the way a parent should. She just wanted the image, the applause. She wanted to play mother without the responsibility. Tessa came by on Friday evening with a bottle of red wine and an enormous box of cupcakes. "You made national TV, you know," she said, grinning. "I did a live interview this morning. People are already calling you the courtroom mother." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. God, I didn't mean for any of that to happen. "I know," she said. "That's why it's powerful. You weren't out for revenge. You were out for truth. And people can feel the difference." She sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same one Elise used to sit during holidays. "By the way," Tessa added, reaching into her briefcase, "we got a letter from the board." She slid it across the table. "Langford's license is officially suspended pending a disciplinary hearing. He won't be practicing for a long time." I nodded, not with joy, but with finality. Good. Maybe someone else won't fall for the calm voice and warm smile. Tessa leaned back and looked at me. "What are you going to do next?" I thought for a moment, then smiled. "Live. Breathe. and maybe start helping other women who've been in this exact position. Because you know what I've realized? There are a lot of us, and we're always told to stay quiet to keep the peace. Tessa raised her glass. Here's to not keeping the peace. We clinked glasses, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the future unfolding in front of me like an open road. Not perfect, not paved, but mine. Entirely mine. 6 months later, the house feels different. Lighter, quieter. Not just because we painted over Elise's old sunflower yellow in the kitchen or swapped out the floral curtains for calming grays, but because the air inside is no longer tense with pretending. My son loves the backyard now. He calls it our kingdom. We planted tomatoes, even though neither of us really likes them. And every morning he checks on them like they're little green treasures. Some days I still wake up with that clenching feeling in my chest, as if I'm waiting for another betrayal to land. But then I hear him humming from his room, or I smell the maple syrup from the pancakes he's trying to make on his own. And I remember we made it through. A few weeks ago, I was invited to speak at a support circle for women navigating high-conflict custody battles. I almost said no, but then I thought about how scared I'd been, sitting alone in that attic with nothing but a voice memo from my mother and the echo of my sister's lies. I thought about the women who never get to tell their story. So I said yes. The night of the meeting, I wore jeans and a sweatshirt. No armor, just honesty. I told them what happened. I told them about the courtroom, the recording, the moment I realized they weren't just trying to hurt me. They were trying to erase me. And I told them about the day I stood up anyway. Afterward, a woman in her 50s came up and hugged me. She whispered, "You made me feel less crazy." I carried that sentence home like a medal. That's what this story is really about. Not revenge, not even justice, but reclamation of truth, of motherhood, of voice. I haven't spoken to Elise since the hearing. She sent one email, 2 sentences, no apology, just, "I hope you're happy. This ruined everything." I never replied. I didn't need to, because it didn't ruin everything. It saved what mattered. Ryan's license is still under suspension. He filed to relocate to another state, but the disciplinary board is holding it up. I don't follow his case anymore. He no longer owns space in my life. My dad and I talk sometimes, not every day, not like before. But the calls are softer now. He asks about his grandson, he asks about me. And slowly, without saying the words, I think he's trying to earn back the trust he once handed Elise like it cost him nothing. Some days I feel bitter about that, but most days I just feel tired of being bitter. That's the thing about healing. It's not loud or dramatic. It's quiet. It's remembering you like chamomile tea in the evenings, or realizing you no longer brace yourself when the phone rings. It's dancing in the living room with your son while spaghetti boils in the kitchen. It's peace. Not because life is perfect now, but because you stopped letting others define who you are. The night before my birthday, I found something in the mailbox. No name, just an envelope. Inside was a hand-drawn picture of a woman with long hair standing in front of a courthouse, holding a child's hand. In the background, written in crayon, were the words, "She told the truth, and we believed her." My son had asked his teacher if he could draw something for the strongest person I know. I stared at that drawing for what felt like forever, because in all the mess, the loss, the courtroom whispers and betrayal, I hadn't realized he saw it, that he saw me, for who I really was. Not broken, not fragile, not dramatic, just brave. And that's enough. If you've ever been made to feel small in your own story, I want you to remember this. The truth has a way of surviving, even when people try to bury it beneath charm, credentials, or family roles. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to keep choosing yourself, especially when they expect you not to. And if no one's told you lately, let me be the first. Your story is not over, not even close. Sometimes the ending they planned for you is just the beginning you needed. And sometimes the softest voice in the room is the one that changes everything.